Welcome. You're listening to a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network. For joining me. I'm Lori Lee Binstock, host of a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network and anywhere you get your podcast. Today's going to be a little different format. I do not have a guest today, but I will be chatting with you for the next 15-20 minutes. I have been getting some requests. Some new people have joined in to listen to the podcast who don't really know my story, and I know throughout my interviews with guests, I kind of slip in some of my own experiences that kind of relate to the topic that's going on. And so just to kind of recap, because I haven't really shared my story since since episode 0, which was titled Vulnerability is My Superpower, which is when the first time I actually shared my story and why I started the podcast. As many of you may know already, I am a childhood sexual abuse survivor. I was sexually abused by my biological father. And, it took me years and years. It wasn't until I was 35 when I actually got the help. It was actually my last suicide attempt out of what I thought was 5, but was actually 6, because there was a moment in my teenage years that I thought was just a car accident, but I guess it was me attempting to take my life, and I know that's irresponsible, and maybe that's why I had blocked it out for so long, because that was just a really hard thing to wrap my head around. It's really funny how teenagers do that. Um, they're just they're kind of just in their own world, and obviously that's the developing brain, and so you know what I'd like to talk about is kind of giving like kids the tools. Like for me as a childhood sexual abuse survivor, obviously people weren't talking about that, or mental health for that matter, in the 90s. And I just kind of went about my life suppressing this event. Something that I've probably talked about so many times on the podcast was, so the abuse happened around 8. It's really hard for me to pin down the around the time that it happened. But if I were to guess based on other things that were happening in my life, it would have been 8, 9-ish. Um, but that's what kind of trauma survivors really do, is they like to, not like to, because it's not a choice, um, suppress those feelings of abuse, because if you think about them, sometimes it's too much. It's just too much. So I pushed it down. I pushed it down so far, far down. But with anything, you can't just ignore it. Like a physical wound, you can't just put a band-aid over it and hope for the best. You actually have to go down and heal it. And so for me, I did not know anything about mental health, anything about trauma. That's just something I've learned in the last 5 years. Um, but it wasn't until I was around 16 years old and I had a mushroom trip. And all I saw was this horrible, horrible experience of me being abused by my father, and it just wouldn't go away. For the love of God, I was just like trying to will it away, but I just couldn't. So I took these mushrooms, and it was just coming in and in and in, and I thought in my head the only way to get rid of these thoughts were to kill myself, because I felt trapped in them. I felt trapped in this cycle of abuse. And luckily, I was distracted. Someone came in. They called me out to check out what was happening outside with some of my other friends. And I call it divine intervention because I really do feel like if I was left by myself for much longer, I don't know what would have happened. From there, I decided not to ever do that again. Years later, I realized the power of psychedelics is it's showing you exactly what you need to heal, and that was exactly what needed to come up. Um, so, that trauma, I obviously pushed that down and kind of went on with my life, went off to college, focused on, trying to, you know, forget about what had happened to me. And I think I did a pretty good job, but that's the thing, I thought I did. I had very difficult relationships, challenging experiences, which kind of snowballed into other traumas. Um, and it would just creep out. And I wish, let me see if I could actually get um, the book that changed everything for me. The Body Keeps the Score. Do I have that right now? Oh, what would have been a good idea was for me to actually would be for me to actually write down, highlight, and actually talk about it because I remember. So I went into treatment. I had my last suicide attempt, in which is when my husband and I had decided that I was going to go into residential treatment, where I went into treatment for trauma. And my therapist had asked me to read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. As a childhood sexual abuse survivor, a lot of the things I felt were my fault. I did something wrong. What did I do? Um, I got into drugs. I am a bad person. Um, I just got into a lot of trouble. I'm a bad person. This is who I am. I'm just a difficult child. I'm a problem child. Um, this is who I am. But when my therapist gave me this book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, um, everything really changed. It was like textbook symptoms of everything that had happened to me growing up. Everything that the bad choices I made growing up were symptoms of PTSD, of a childhood sexual abuse survivor. And then, so then I started talking to other people who had also been abused. And you know, I had my mom. So after my going back, sorry, this is probably just a lot of very disjointed, um, but stream of conscious speaking. Um, but after I actually released the first podcast, a cousin had reached out to me and basically told me their story about them also being abused by their father. And I remember telling my mom and sharing this with my mom. This was after I had told her about my situation, and she was devastated. Um, but when I told her about the cousin who admitted this stuff to me, her response was, "But she was just a bad teenager. She was a bad kid. She was a bad influence. She was." And it just really dawned on me, like, no, she wasn't a bad person or a bad kid. It was really because she had experienced bad shit. And this is what happened because of that. And I don't believe anyone's a bad person. I really don't think so. I think a lot of people do bad things. And I think a lot of the times it's because they've experienced some really bad shit. And I really, really don't want to I really just hate the idea. I mean, I know people probably have experienced bad things happening to them from people that they believe are bad people. Um, but I spoke about this several times with so many different people on the podcast that, hurt people. And and I think if we, showed some compassion and some empathy for every individual who have wronged us, we wouldn't be holding so much anger. Um, I tell my daughter and my son this all the time. When people do things to deliberately hurt you, it's not about you. There's something going on with them. This, I say this constantly, and I am really sick of hearing about, vulnerability is weakness, empathy, compassion's weakness. That is garbage. It takes a lot to show compassion. Anger is easy. Anger, you could just get mad at somebody, but showing compassion towards somebody, um, especially somebody who is different than you, someone you may not even understand, but being able to say they probably went through some stuff, I think that takes so much from a person to be able to do. Like, that is like some inner work that you're able to find, that you're not offended by, what someone does. I'm not saying I do that. I'm saying I'd like to get to that point. I'm still dealing with my own trauma. I still have a little anger, a little hate in there, a little road rage that comes out. Um, and I get a little triggered by my children. But it's not, it's something that I am constantly working on. Um, but shoot, it would be so easy to get angry at somebody. And sometimes it feels good. But then, like, an hour later, it's like, oh, wow, I just lost my dignity just yelling at that person. Um, so today, actually, a couple hours ago, I did 5-MeO DMT. And if you don't know what that is, it's a psychedelic. It's a psychedelic. I would never just take 5-MeO DMT. I worked with a practitioner. It's an hour and a half. Um, and I don't know if you haven't done worked with psychedelics before. One of the things that's important to some people, it's important to me, it's important to my practitioner, is to set intentions. What is it that I feel like has been coming up recently? And I think it has been my anger. And a week or so ago, I was thinking, man, I've done so much work, so much healing work. And I keep getting mad. I keep getting road rage. I actually stopped a woman the other day and got mad at her for cutting me off and stealing my parking spot. I Not my best moment. Um, and I also then explained to her after I proceeded to ask her if she knew how to proceed through a four-way stop sign. Um, to tell her about, I don't know what compelled me to, but I got upset, obviously. And she said she was sorry. But then I proceeded to tell her how terrible my morning was. It wasn't even 9 o'clock. I was single parenting at the time. My husband was out of town. And just the kids were just not getting along. It was just a rough morning. And I knew I had 2 more days of the single parenting. So I was just like, just anticipating the worst. Then I decided to, share that with her. And then she was, God, I don't like, so compassionate, and was just like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. And I still wanted to get mad. I was like, God, I just want to be mad though. But I can't because this person is being so kind to me. So that kind of made me stop and was like, okay, well, we're done here. Okay, bye. Thank you. And then I left super embarrassed. I went to the gym hoping that she was also not in that gym class. Um, but I realized like that really made me turn around and look at myself and think, what the hell, Lori Lee? What did you just do? You didn't keep it together. So, anyways, I'm like going through, and this is like, I went through a shame spiral, and I just was so angry that week. Um, and God, looking back, I'm like, oh, that was so horrible. Um, and it was, but it wasn't, it really made me stop and think, like, okay. She made me stop and think and be like, okay, I need to keep it together and I need to stop yelling at other people, like in the car driving, because I don't know what they're going through either. Plus, it's dangerous. Road rage is terrible. I if you could work on it, please do. Um, I'm constantly working on it. So, anyways, off on my tangent. I I was just curious, like why am I so angry? Why? And then this meme popped up on social media. It said, actually, it was someone I actually interviewed in my first season, and maybe I'll go back to interview her again. But she was so upset that her, she's been working on her healing, but she was so upset that her that anger was coming out. And then it said maybe it's coming out because now it feels safe to feel angry. And I felt that so hard because I'm like, I think I am. I feel like I am healing and I'm on this healing path. And I don't want to be angry, but I don't want to be angry because I was also told that being angry is a bad thing. And while it is, I felt like this anger has been pent up for years and years and years since I was a child. I never felt safe to be angry or felt safe to show any emotion really except happiness, right? We're not allowed to feel anything but happiness. But that meme or whatever she wrote really spoke to me, and I do feel like it was just me. I'm just working on my healing, and I'm feeling safe now to let that anger out. So like I was saying a couple hours ago, I did 5-MeO DMT. It's an hour and a half session, psychedelic. You smoke it through a vape pen. I mean, I think there's other ways to do it, but I smoked mine through a vape pen. I set my intentions. I said anger's been coming up for me, and I've been so confused why this anger is coming up, but maybe I am needing to feel this anger. Um, and so I kind of just took that with me on this journey. And if you've heard my interview um, about 5-MeO DMT, um, I talked a lot about this physical reaction. And like we were talking about, body keeps the score. The body remembers the feeling. And that feeling gets trapped into your body. Also, another book my therapist suggested was Peter Levine's Waking the Tiger, talking about somatic experiencing and how trauma gets trapped in your body. And unlike humans, who have evolved, they're animals in the wild, they shake. And some people do shake when they're feeling anxious or nervous or angry. And that's a good thing. That's you feeling it, and that's it being trying to get released from your body. So in my 5-MeO DMT session, they call it five, so I'll call it five. Um, I was just shaking convulsively. Kind of scary, actually. If I didn't know what was happening, I think I've read enough about somatic experiencing and trauma and just trauma in general, where I was like, yeah, this is what's happening. And so I just let my body like convulse like a dead fish flopping on land. And oh, gosh, the release feels really good. It feels really good when you actually don't feel like you need to tighten up to keep your body to keep it together. I just let it all go, and there was like some moaning and just I didn't cry the first time I cried, but I felt like just so like just a cleansing of stress and trauma. Um, And I really highly recommend it. You know, if you are fortunate to find a practitioner who can do this for you, I highly recommend, searching for someone. Um, this is not a drug that that you would want to take recreationally or that you could get addicted to. I cannot see anybody wanting to do this for fun. This is strictly a cleanse your body, cleanse your mind, cleanse all the stories that people have told you about who you should be. Um, and I honestly will probably do this again sometime in the future because I feel that I have so many layers of trauma that have just really tensed my body. I feel like it's in my body and I really want it to be released. But when I've this is my third time doing it. And the first two times I've done it, I've the first time I did, I was crying hysterically and just thinking of all of the trauma and releasing all of that. And the last time I felt like the same, but not as it wasn't as intense. And this time it wasn't as intense either. But I did feel like I was still stripping away all of the stories of not being good enough. It's like a constant work in progress. And I feel like with the state of the world as it is right now, I feel like there's just a collective stressful energy. Um, and it's really, really nice to be able to let that go because I think we hold on to a lot of things that we feel is familiar, like trauma and chaos. And I just never have I wanted peace more. So, um, I will say, I don't know how long this has been. I haven't actually been keeping time, but I will say I'll probably be wrapping up. I think I'm going to be doing these like solo sessions about once a month. I think we only have like another 2 months of podcasts. So probably two more, and then my next season, I plan on doing this as well. Um, just to, and maybe I'll be joined by my creative director, Callie Bidstock, who's also my cousin. She is my husband's cousin's wife, who is also my creative director for Authentic Insider magazine. And if you want to hear more different topics, I know it's like trauma, trauma, trauma. I know some people said they want more woohoo on here. I like woohoo, so I'll be sure to also include that. I love listening to intuitives. If you haven't listened to I believe it was my last episode or the episode before, I had a spiritual intuitive, and it's amazing. Katie Beecher. So find that interview. Um, but I could do more woohoos. You tell me what you want to listen to. I do have the lineup pretty much set for the rest of the season, but I can also subtract my solos if you want me to. So please send me your feedback. Otherwise, I am going on a break next week. It's my children's spring break, and so um, I've decided, well, I decided a while ago that I will not work when my children are home, because I know that I get very frustrated and angry and split my time, but I'm working on my anger. Um, so I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll be sure to maybe have somebody else on so we can kind of maybe someone who can keep me in line so I'm not just jabbering on. I didn't have anything um planned or organized for this one. So this is stream of conscious. But thank you so much for listening and being a part of the conversation. And please reach out. Um, and if you want more information on those books on somatic experiencing and the body keeps a score, I'll put that in the show notes so you can check those out. Um, I believe March's issue of Authentic Insider is out. And, you can go and find past episodes of Trauma Survivor Thrives podcast. You can check out past issues of Authentic Insider at traumasurvivorthriver.com. That's traumasurvivorthriver.com. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening to this on any of the podcast formats, please check out YouTube. I think I might be adding more things there. Again, let me know what you're looking for, and I will try to deliver that for you. Again, traumasurvivorthriver.com. And please, if you haven't subscribed to Authentic Insider Magazine, there is a pop-up menu, a button that comes up where you can just add in your email, and I'll be sure to send Authentic Insider Magazine into your inbox monthly. Well, like I said, I won't be here next week, but I will be back the following week with some great interviews, and not just a solo session, but probably one more eventually before we wrap up season 6. You've been listening to a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network. I'm Lori Lee Binstock. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Take care.